you tell I'm in denial?
You can't stay at the top forever.
I was also very surprised when I looked at my phone and saw Joe Girardi dismissed.
Well, I think mine were with common sense.
I think now belongs in the all-time greats top 10.
Boston, I really think only got to this point because of a guy named Chris Middleton being out for the Bucks.
That power play just was unbearable. It was humming.
Man, am I happy. I knew that this was going to happen. I knew he was going to come back.
When I think of New York Yankees now is Judge, probably people in the past when Jeter was coming up.
I would be shocked. A little bit hurt.
Hey, this is Greg Tepper of Dave Campbell's Texas Football, TexasFootball.com, and Valley Sports Southwest. You are listening to Outsiders Opinions with Kevin and Austin.
What's up, y'all? Welcome to our NFL Opinions of the Week. We are recording after the Thursday Night Football of the football matchup between the Seahawks and Niners with Brock Purdy, who is 2-0. I think that's just a great story. What do you think, Austin?
Yeah, I mean, no one really anticipated him to play this well, and he's done great. I thought that Josh Johnson was going to start because he was obviously Brock Purdy was dealing with some injuries and stuff like that. But this San Francisco defense is elite. They slowed down a great Geno Smith, who's played well all year, and Geno didn't even play all that bad. The Seahawks have to get their running game together, and they can't even guard the run. So that's kind of where their issues fall. But Brock Purdy, with great players around him and a great defense, this team's dangerous.
Yeah, I agree. Geno was just heavily pressured and it's 2 rookie tackles, and I was going to say this Niners defense is very good, probably the best in the league. And I think that's the reason why I still believe I think they're going to be a very dangerous team in the playoffs.
Yeah, they just have to stay healthy. Obviously, some games during the year they didn't play as well. Against the Falcons, they struggled, and against the Chiefs, but in both those games, they were missing some of their best players. So, if they stay healthy, they should still remain as one of, if not the best defenses in the league.
Yeah, I agree. It's talk about the Seahawks too. It's they also are a team that can't stop the run, but they are very nice and fortunate because they will most likely have a top 3 pick. They have a top 3 pick right now via Denver. So I'm not sure they go QB, but I know the Bears are the second pick, which is weird. But I know there's Jalen Carter in that defensive lineman from Georgia. I think that would be a good pick for them.
Yeah, and they just need to make sure that they can get better. I think Geno Smith would not regress next season. Now that Tyler Lockett may be out for the year, that will hurt. But the Giants have really faltered recently, and I would not be surprised if there was some change up there. And there's really 4 teams fighting for that playoff spot. Uh, Washington Giants, or the last 2 spots, Washington Giants, Seahawks, Lions. 2 of those 4 teams will get 2 of those spots. Uh, we'll just have to wait and see.
Yeah, and before we get into next week, last week the Lions pulled off the stunner with the Vikings. I think they're another team that's lucky. They're in the top 5 of the draft. Be interesting what they do with their defense, or if they go a little bit of offense. Then Cowboys and Chiefs struggled against lower teams, but I think they were able to pull it out, so it's a win. But does that change your view on them?
No, I would say no because there's still a lot to be done. We're still not the end of the season, and we have to see how changes are made.
Yeah, I agree. It was just my thing with the Cowboys, but the Chiefs also struggled with it. So we'll see what happens. And this week, Russell Wilson is out once again. I was intrigued what would happen because they pulled him out, and I was like, okay, this is a close game. Is he going to be able to come back in? But because of the new concussion rules, I was like, oh, that's a good sign that they kept him out, and now he's out another week.
Yeah, and the Broncos are definitely out of the playoffs, and we've seen some Marcus Mariota drama and a lot of these other teams, but most of them are not going to be competitive. Luckily, in the NFC, there is a lot of good storylines, and I'm really excited for this Cowboys Eagles game coming up.
Oh yeah, that's gonna be a very fun game. But mention the Marcus Mariota drama. I keep forgetting Desmond Ritter is getting the start this week.
Yes, he will get to start.
I'm excited to see that because I know you and I are both very high on him, and it'll be interesting to see what happens.
Yeah,
And
I
then what were you
yeah,
gonna say?
the Falcons are a team that still technically can get a playoff spot, but their offense has been so reliant on the run that they're going to need some sort of pass attack if they want to get better.
Yeah, and this connects to the Carolina Panthers are still in it. If they win out, I believe they get the NFC South, and then they would make the playoffs, which would be that's another storyline that I was going to bring up when you said storylines.
Yeah,
So now, do you think they'll be able to do it?
I don't know. What do you think?
I'm gonna. This is also me being like hopeful. I'm gonna say yes. Let me check out their schedule because the if the way things stand now, the Cowboys would face the winner of the NFC South, and I don't want to face the Bucks.
You don't want to
So
face the Bucks. I don't think
yeah, no, no,
anyone
no, no.
wants to face the Bucks necessarily because of Tom Brady, but their running game is one of the worst in the league. Their O line has been horrible. Too many penalties, too many errors. Their wide receivers are top five in drops this year. Um, they have a
Oh,
lot of issues.
I said I don't want to face the Bucks.
Yeah, I know, but I was giving
Okay.
reasons why you may want to.
Yeah, no, no. Tom Brady's the reason. I didn't know if you said I said want instead of do not want. I would rather face the Panthers. They they could do it. You have Steelers, who Mitch Trubisky, I believe, is going to make the start. Then the Lions, then Bucks, and then Saints.
The Bucks game is going to be huge for what you're saying to happen. They must win that Bucks game. They have to win out.
Yeah, and then you compare it to the Bucks schedule. I know they're facing the Bengals this week. Then, well, the Cardinals, Panthers, then Falcons. So it's really that Bengals game.
Yeah, yeah. That is the one that looks tough.
Yeah, the Bengals just look like really good right now, and I know they're still in the play for the number one seed. Um, and then, is there anything else that happened this past week you want to talk about?
Mike White coming back after injury. Uh, I know he's not going to play this week. It's going to be Zach Wilson, but he really got destroyed in that game. But the Bills still look like they're trying to find their way. They are not playing as dominantly as someone like I would have wanted because I had them playing very well this year. But we'll have to see.
Yeah, I agree. Bills haven't played, and I saw some of the hits where, and I was also listening. Someone was like, "That's the most legal hit," but it's like the hardest legal hit that Mike White was taking, and that just stinks. And I know Zach Wilson. We'll see what happens. As I believe it's against an easier team, the Jets. Do they face? Oh, they face the Lions. Um, and then they face the Dolphins at the end of the year. But maybe Lions defense is getting better, but maybe that can ease Zach Wilson in. But I think they're just trying to get to the offseason where they can upgrade at QB.
You think they will?
Yeah, I think so. Like, I don't think they're gonna run it back with Wilson. Or
I
do you
think Mike
think?
White is the future, though. Like, he's played extremely well. I think they will give him that chance, especially if they make the playoffs and he performs well.
Okay, I'd be like I would understand why they go with Mike White. I'm just not sure if they were gonna go down that road and go, hey, let's
I
try
feel like
this
they would
out.
at least give him the chance, especially
Okay.
because the rest of their team has played so well around him.
Okay. Yeah, that's fair. And they could be too priced out on the QBs with like Gino. I know is a free agent. Jacoby Brissett, and then Baker Mayfield, depending on what happens the next few weeks, because his stock is definitely high after that Raiders win.
Yeah, I'd agree.
What'd you think about that Raiders win?
The Raiders are such a confusing team, and the way the Rams played with so many players out, and I still think Baker, I've said this, is very underrated. He was put in a terrible situation with the Browns at the beginning of his career, terrible situation with the Panthers, and I believe, given a great offensive coordinator, I know he's not the offensive coordinator, but he is the offensive coordinator, Sean McVay. I I I really believe that he could be a successful player. Now we have to see it happen, but there's still a lot of players out, and obviously they're not fighting for a playoff spot. So
Well, yeah, that's why I brought up the Baker thing, because I know you've been a huge fan of him and defender this year.
yeah, I remain. It's not like Matt Rule was a great head coach in the NFL, and Baker has shown flashes throughout his career. So we'll see.
Okay, I was gonna give you like room to like go. I was right, but do you not want? Do you want to wait?
It's too early.
Okay, okay. Well, I'll give you a little celebratory. Congrats. But he does have a great offensive coordinator, and someone mentioned this. He does great in McVay's systems because I believe before his injury, I think that was the second year, or last year was the second year of Stefanski, correct?
Yes.
And I believe Stefanski came from McVay, and like he didn't do well last year because of the
Well,
injury and
Stefanski came
stuff.
from the Vikings, but did he come from McVay
Oh,
before that?
okay, maybe not. I thought he was running a McVay system.
I could be wrong. You just have to.
No, I think he did come from Viking. Yeah, he
I
did
know he
come from.
came from the Vikings, but he could have been with McVay before that. Was what I was saying.
Let's see. So, um, looks like he was an assistant for the Vikings. Yeah, it looks like he's just been with the Vikings all that long. So, yeah, I guess not. Who else though? Who else are the other coaches? What do you? Or maybe it was just Stefanski, and then he looks great in the McVay system. And there are plenty of people he could find a McVay system elsewhere that could also help him do well in the future.
Yeah, and the Rams have a lot of experience. I know they're playing terrible this year, and it kind of shows why I thought last year was kind of a fluke. But they definitely have a lot of experience, a lot of older players, and McVay is one of the best coaches in the league. No matter what record they have this year, that does not change the fact that McVay is a great head coach.
Oh yeah, I totally agree. I think it's finally caught up to them. Their pursuit for a Super Bowl is like caught up to them, um, because they don't they didn't have many high picks or just any picks in the first 3 rounds because they traded him away. So now they're older. People are getting injured, Stafford, or they're just getting older and they have it's like exposing holes because the problem with the offensive line, wide
After Andrew
receiver,
Whitworth retired, that was
yeah,
game changing. And again, they bought in so hard that if they didn't get, I'm not going to say bailed into winning, but if they didn't get perfect situation to happen where the Bucks decided not to guard the deep ball with time left, which made absolutely no sense. The 49ers offensive line collapsing, and then obviously what happened in the Bengals game. This would have been one of the most tragic ways to see this Rams team go, but now because they won, it doesn't matter, and everything is still, I would say, in a good mood in LA because they won last year. Like, hey, we're 4-9, but we won a Super Bowl. Who cares?
yeah, I agree. They won, so it doesn't really matter. And if they don't win the Super Bowl, there's definitely a different outlook. But maybe they can bounce back next year. Not sure. Um, but we'll just have to see. So there's that, and now we go on to this week. I know there's some clinching scenarios. Niners just clinched. Um, the Eagles clinched a playoff spot last week. I know the Cowboys can clinch with a win, and maybe a Lions loss. But then the Sunday night game is the Giants in Washington, and so that's a big thing on wild card standings. I know you talked about that earlier.
Yeah, that game is massive between Washington and the Giants.
Yeah, and I know the Giants are heavily injured, and then we'll have to see what happens with the Commanders. But who do you think wins?
I don't know. They tied last time, and that's. I mean, I'm not going to say a tie because ties are very, very unlikely. If I had to guess, I'm going to go with the Giants because I feel like Washington doesn't match up well with the Giants. Because when I think of the Washington, I think of their pass rush. When I think of the Giants, I think of the running game. So if the Giants can get their running game going and the Giants defense is good enough to hold off, I'm going to go with Giants. But
Okay, okay.
it will be very weird if that huge scoring both teams can't play defense game between Seattle and Detroit is the tiebreaker for who makes the playoffs. If one of the Washington or Giants, I don't think the Seattle Seahawks or Lions will fall off a cliff. I think they both will be right there at around 9-8, 10-7. But for whatever happens between the Giants and Washington, that game could be a tiebreaker.
Yeah, and then another key game could be the Titans and Chargers. Oh, what did you think of that Chargers Dolphins game?
Really, really weird. I don't know. I watched the game and everything that happened was confusing to me. Tua didn't throw as accurate as I thought he would have. Tyreek Hill touchdown was one of the weirdest touchdowns I've seen all season, probably. Maybe the weirdest touchdown. Because I'm like, oh, the play's dead because I couldn't even see the ball. Like the ball was off of the screen under the pile. I'm like, oh, they're gonna blow this dead, but then it just squirts out and Tyreek's just that fast. But it was a weird game. It was one of the weirdest games I've watched all year, but the Chargers came out on top.
Yeah, and Herbert looked great. Especially he looks healthy now, and now he has his top two pass catchers back on, and they're both playing. So that was it. Definitely was a weird game because I'm like, okay, Dolphins are going to come and win this, and then it just never happened.
Yeah, you almost. I don't know if you thought this while watching, but you always were like, okay, this drive the Dolphins are going to click it into gear. Oh, they did.
Yeah.
Okay, this drive they're going to get it together. And then at some point you were like, they're just not going to get it together. The Chargers are going to win.
Yeah, I was definitely like, okay, because I was like gonna go to bed early, and I'm like, okay, we'll win. Okay, no, it's still close. They're still winning. Okay, so I'm basically lying on my bed, and then just having the game. I'm like, when is it gonna happen? And then it was like, oh, they won. And have you been paying attention to like the Twitter discourse between Herbert and Tua?
I did not, or I haven't.
It's not actually Tua and Herbert. It's people talking about Tua and Herbert as QBs. Huh. Emmanuel Acho's like Tua's better, and then Emmanuel Acho like, issued an apology.
That's crazy. Tua's not better than Herbert. Him saying that's wild. That is actually crazy. Tua's good, but no. But the talent that Tua gets to throw the ball to every week is crazy comparatively to Herbert, who's had Allen out for the majority of the year. Mike Williams gets hurt. Josh Palmer is a good third option, but he just doesn't have the O-line help. If there wasn't Eckler, their offense for half the year would be horrible. But Eckler, this may sound crazy, but Eckler, I think, is the most important running back in the league.
I would agree. Maybe Saquon.
I could see that as well. I could also hear the argument for Derrick Henry. Those are the three I could hear.
Oh, yeah, sure. Yeah, those three.
But Eckler, like literally, when they didn't have Mike Williams or Keenan Allen and Joshua Palmer wasn't really playing all that well, and Guyton wasn't playing all that well. The entire offense ran through Eckler, and they're like, "Oh, wasn't getting much yards per carry." Yeah, but he was also getting like 18 targets in a game, and every time. You remember that Chief? Was it a Chiefs game? No, was it a Raiders game or a Chiefs game? I think it was a Chiefs game. Like every pass went to Eckler. Every pass. There was one game. I can't remember who. No, it was the Broncos game. That's the game I'm thinking of. Where every pass went to Eckler. 3rd and 17 is going to Eckler. 3rd and 1 is going to Eckler. 3rd and 10 is going to Eckler. 2nd and 2 is going to Eckler. 2nd and 17 is going to Eckler. 1st and 10 is going to Eckler. Every play going to Eckler. Eckler deserves to be a Pro Bowler. He is.
Oh yeah,
He's so good. It's shocking to me, in fact, that he has not made one yet, considering the
Really?
fact that he. Yeah, I know, right? And last year,
yeah.
he had total scrimmage yards of 1,558 and led the league in receiving plus rushing touchdowns. So, receiving plus rushing, he led the league in touchdowns. He had 12 rushing touchdowns and 8 receiving touchdowns. This year, he has 8 rushing touchdowns, 5 receiving touchdowns. Now, people are like, oh, he's not one of the best running backs in the league. He only has 634 rushing yards. Yes, but he also has 623 receiving yards. So he still has 1,257 yards from scrimmage, and none of those yards are from punt return to kick returns. So he's a major reason why this Chargers team is looking like they could still get a playoff spot.
Yeah, and I would argue it's also Herbert because Herbert is just an incredibly talented QB. Tua, I think, is just like working. I think he's a good QB, but he's definitely benefiting from Hill.
I wouldn't
and
even
Waddle.
I wouldn't put Herbert into it in the same tier, would you?
Oh yeah, they're definitely not in the same tier. Herbert's better, but like because it all comes down to the Dolphins could have drafted Herbert, but they chose Tua.
Yeah.
So that's what they're just like linked to each other, and I'm like, Tua's not bad, but
No.
Herbert is amazing.
To say just because you say Herbert's better than Tua is not a falter on Tua. It's just Herbert's better. That's why a lot of people in sports get this wrong. Where we'll say one player is better than the other. Well, that player's not bad. I never said that player was bad. It's just this player is better than that player. And that's kind of what's going on here. Tua fans or Dolphins fans, whenever they hear Herbert's better, Tua's so good. Well, Tua can also be so good and Herbert be better. So, yeah.
Herbert just has incredible arm strength. But I was really impressed with Chargers defense because they stood up, and I know that's like the second week in a row the Dolphins offense has struggled. The broadcast focusing on like the press coverage um, of the Chargers. They focus more on the Chargers because like the Niners defense has personnel, but the Chargers defense doesn't have as good as personnel as the Niners. So we'll have to see what happens to the Dolphins, who face the Bills, and that's going to be important matchup and hopefully a great game.
Yeah, but to say that the Chargers don't have a good defense is not entirely accurate, as they still have Khalil Mack and Joey Bosa, who I believe is back, right? Is he back
I
yet?
thought he was injured.
Oh, he's not back yet?
Yeah, I thought he was injured last week, and then wasn't Derwin James was out too. Like they do have a good defense. It's just not as good as like the Niners defense. And I know, and like Derwin James is out, Bosa's out. Khalil Mack though has been good. They have Asante Samuel, but I think they're not playing J.C. Jackson or something's up with him because I don't think he was playing last Sunday night.
Yeah, I thought Bosa was supposed to be back soon, but apparently not. He still is going to be out for this week coming up, so he would be
But yeah,
huge
like
to return for them,
oh,
though.
yeah, I agree. Like if everyone's healthy, it's a great defense. But to me, I was really impressed with like the management by Brandon. Oh shoot, I can't remember his name. The head coach.
Brent Staley.
Oh, Staley. Yeah, Brandon Staley. Because he was a great defense coordinator with the Rams. But that was just something to see, and we'll see how the Bills defense chooses to defend that high-powered Dolphins offense.
I do want to ask you. Now maybe you just will go with the obvious answer here about defensive player of the year. You would still say Parsons, right?
I'm probably going to go Micah, because I think he's just had such a great year, and he's a huge part for that Cowboys defense.
Yeah, I could definitely see that. It's definitely going to be huge for them if Parsons can keep playing the way. The only other person I would really have in that argument right now is Nick Bosa, who leads the league in sacks, 15 and a half. Absolutely monster year for him. But Parsons is just special. Like, yes, he has less sacks, only 12, but I feel like that's more about the fact that he gets sacks for his team by just being there, just his presence. And I will say, I've been thinking about what you said a lot. You always said that this is one of the luckiest draft picks in Cowboys history.
For sure.
And I would argue that it's one of the luckiest picks in NFL history, where the way that he fell there and how important, how quickly he's become. Like, he was one of the best defensive players in the year last season as a rookie.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he has the potential to be one of the best defensive players of all time.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And the he just fell in the Cowboys' lap.
Well, yeah, because if you look at that draft, the Cowboys were going to go corner, in my opinion, because it was J.C. Horn and Patrick Surtain, both picked right before the Cowboys picked, when we had that 10th pick, and then I believe we traded down with like the Eagles or something, and then we're at 11, and we're like, well, we'll just pick a linebacker because the plan was for the linebackers to be LVE and Jalen Smith. I'm like, well, we'll just pick a linebacker, and that was Parsons. So, yeah, you could. He is one of the luckiest. I would still say like the luckiest draft pick is Tom Brady, and then I can't think of others. I can't remember.
The issue with saying lucky with Tom Brady, in my opinion, even though it is lucky, I'm not going to say it's not lucky, is that every team had a chance to get him. So I don't see as much as luck as it is incompetence for everyone else. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, this one is that,
I kind of see what you're saying.
Like, I feel like other teams would have chosen Parsons, maybe even higher, if they were the team that was above you guys. And the Patriots, I feel like, I see your point, but I just feel like the Parsons one, not everyone else had the chance, and that's why it's lucky. Is that everything had to go right before the season? Like, they had to get the 12th pick. Dak had to be hurt.
Mm-hmm.
So if you look at it like that, Dak had to be hurt. Certain exact players had to be taken above you guys. And then you're like, oh, well, we'll go with this guy who was like 5th on our board or whatever for who we thought we were going to take. That's what I meant by luck. Where the Tom Brady situation, everybody had the chance. So I don't find it as lucky because not everything had to go right to get Brady. They were just like, well, we thought this guy was a good QB and no one else took him, so we'll take him.
Okay, I see your point. My thing is like, there's no way. Tom Brady's like the extreme example, but with like Micah, even if you draft him, I don't think people expect him to be like a pass rusher. Like, yeah, you're a good off-ball linebacker. And he played DE, I believe, in like high school because he played DE against the Chargers last year. I remember because like, hey, we don't have anyone else, so can you try DE? And then they're like, okay, he's kind of good at this. And then this year it's like, well, Randy Gregory left, so we're just gonna move Parsons to the right and rush. Oh wow, he's a really good rusher.
Yeah, he does everything though. He's one of the most versatile defenders in the league.
Yeah, I agree.
Like I said,
yeah, it's great.
If let's say the Cowboys win out, the Cowboys are what, 10-3?
Yeah, and if they win out, they need one loss from the Eagles to get the number 1 seed. Well, they need to, they win out and they need another loss from the Eagles.
Yeah, I was about to say another loss. They can't. Yeah, but if here's let me put it this way. I would, if the Cowboys win out if Parsons just continues what he's doing and they get the number 1 seed, my vote for MVP is Micah Parsons. People will go Mahomes. People will go other players because it's a QB league. But and normally I'm not against a lot of QBs being MVPs. People are like, oh, it's a QB award. Well, yeah, normally the QB is the most important position on the field. Normally. But what happened this year? Cooper Rush was out, and they still went 4-1 with him as their starter. And a big part of that was Micah Parsons is the best defensive player in football.
I agree. I'm glad you mentioned the MVP thing because like the QBs, I get why it's like a QB league, and like Parsons has talked about this. He's got in trouble with Philly fans, but to me, the quarterbacks this year, like Mahomes is doing well, like Jalen Hurts is doing well. Like okay, you're cool, but I feel like this would be the year to give to someone else. I was gonna say Tyreek Hill if he reaches 2,000 yards.
I wouldn't because again, it's yards per game for me. Now,
Okay.
because you add a game, right? You add a game so that you're going to make it to where it's you eventually someone's going to pass Calvin Johnson because you're given an extra game to pass Calvin Johnson. It's yards per game, and for him to be Hall of Fame, if not Hall of Fame, MVP. If he goes above Calvin in yards per game, yes, I would think he'd be up there. But again, someone has to throw him the ball. And with Tyreek, you have to be able. Tyreek is not a go up and get it guy like Calvin. Calvin, it wouldn't matter so much if he had a bad QB as much because it's just prayers when you throw into Calvin. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
But with Hill, you still have to get open. I know it's really easy for him to get open because of how fast he is. But and another thing about Jalen Hurts is that he hasn't really impressed me with his arm yet. He's getting some of the best protection I've ever seen in league history. No one touches him. And
I agree.
when he's standing in the pocket, now does he get a lot of sacks? Yes, he gets a lot of sacks. You know why he gets a lot of sacks? Because he runs around in the pocket. And he doesn't throw picks, which is a good thing. You don't want to throw picks. But he doesn't throw the ball away as much. And he's a running quarterback, so he's going to be running out of the pocket and getting sacked. But when he's standing in the pocket, his protection is amazing. And I would not personally vote for him. If I'm voting for a QB, it's Patrick Mahomes.
Oh, I agree. Yeah, Mahomes does have more interceptions, but he has like so many
He's
more yards.
11 more. Yes, he has 8 more interceptions, but he also has 11 more touchdowns.
And he also has like 400 more yards.
It's
Or no?
let me see.
Because
No,
with
no,
Hurts,
he has 1,000 more yards.
oh my gosh.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Hurts
I'm
has
still gonna go with Mahomes.
3150. Hurts has 3157. Mahomes has 4160. He's 1,003 more yards.
Dang. And another thing with Jalen, like he has a great offensive line, but he also has great wide receivers. And I think he has a guy. It's not like to the Calvin Johnson level, but like the same
Well, it's
archetype. Like I can throw
when
the
you add Devontae plus, you can't
AJ Brown.
double either of them. Is the problem because if you double either of them, you're leaving the other guy 1v1, and I would take 1v1 on either of those guys any day of the week. I would not be
Yeah, and like
nervous.
they're different types. Like I can throw the ball and like AJ Brown will like moss you. Devontae Smith is to me like a great route runner, so that's how he gets open.
Devontae Smith is
That
a top 3 route runner in the league already. The only one I put above him is Devontae, or the only one I can clearly put above him is Devontae. Because Devontae, even though he goes up and gets it, Devontae's best attribute has always been his route running. He runs some of the most beautiful routes ever. So, I mean, watching him play is amazing.
Yeah, I agree. And so yeah, that's my thing with the Eagles. So I would, but like I think we should talk about like let's put Parsons in there. Let's put Tyreek Hill, another non-quarterback, because this seems like the year where it's like, okay, they're good QBs. You can make an argument for all of them because Jalen has had a great year, and his team is only one loss. So I think that's the main factor in pushing him into the MVP conversation, and he's had a good year.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I believe it's gonna be a fun final few weeks. And then we'll have to see how the seventh seed does in a lot of these games in the playoffs because there's a lot of competition for him.
And that could be an advantage.
Yeah, they totally could. We could see a Phillies run, especially in the NFC. Maybe it depends on the AFC. Um, if we want to mix sports, but that's all I got. I'll let you close it out.
Yeah, thank you guys for listening. It's been a very interesting NFL year, and stay with us all the way.